Hangzhou, China, 1885. The emperor's men came to seize the fortune of the richest banker in China. They found an empty house. The silver, gone. The servants, gone. The honors the emperor had given him, stripped. 2 years before, he had run the largest private bank in the country. He had bankrolled the state itself. He had cornered a global market. And then it was gone. All of it. History remembers the bet that ruined him. It wasn't the bet. His name was Hu Xue Yan. He was not born to any of it. He came into the world in 1823 in a poor village. His father died when he was a boy. There was no inheritance, no name to trade on. Only an orphan sent off to the city to sweep the floor of a small bank. He had one gift. He could count. He started at the bottom, sweeping floors, hauling water, running a grown man's errands. But he kept the books cleaner than clerks twice his age, and the childless owner came to treat him like a son. When the old man died, he left Hu the bank and the money in it. The boy who had swept the bank floor now owned the bank. That bank would become the seed of an empire. And Hu turned out to be a genius, not at making money, but at using other people's money. He built a banking empire, not one bank. 9, a chain of them, reaching from Hangzhou to Shanghai to Peking. His banks drew deposits, the savings of merchants, the idle funds of officials, the money of anyone who trusted him to hold it. He understood banks better than anyone alive. A bank is a simple yet dangerous business. It takes your money, promises to hand it back the moment you ask, and lends it out to someone else in between. It runs on trust, the belief that your money is still there. Hu understood trust. He sold trust. He even built a shop to prove it, a pharmacy named after himself. Its doors still open in Hangzhou today. Over the counter, he carved 2 characters. No deception. Buy honestly. Sell honestly. Cheat no one, not the public, and not yourself. The stories pile up around that pharmacy, that he destroyed a whole batch of medicine rather than sell it flawed, that he covered a poor man's prescription out of his own pocket, that he sold below cost to those who couldn't pay. It was good medicine. It was even better marketing. The man who would never cheat you was the man you would hand your money to. Then Hu learned the second half of the business. Money alone made a merchant. Money and a friend in office made kings. So how do you turn a bank into power? You find a man on his way up, and you pay his way. Hu found a mid-level official named Wang Youling. There was a vacant post in waiting, but Wang didn't have the cash to grease the wheels. Hu covered it, all of it, out of his own bank's money. He bet a fortune on a stranger's career. The bet paid. Wang rose to rule the entire province and never forgot who had carried him. He steered the province's finances straight through Hu's banks. The boy who swept the floor had found his lever. At his peak, the legends could barely keep up. 20 banks, then 30. A fortune of 100 million in silver, more, they swore, than the emperor kept in his own treasury. The richest man in the world, in a palace in Hangzhou, surrounded by hundreds of servants. Almost none of it was his. It was other people's, those who trusted the name over the door. Hu didn't own 100 million. He held it for other people. And he had promised every one of them that they could have it back the moment they asked. That was Hu's empire, built on a promise. The 1860s nearly broke the Chinese state. A vast rebellion had gutted the richest provinces and emptied the treasury. The state had wars to fight on every front, but no money to fight them with. So it did what broken states do. It turned to private bankers. Hu found his second patron in a general, General Zhou Tsung-tang. Zhou marched the imperial forces south to crush the rebels, then turned west to do the same. Hu bankrolled the emperor's army when the emperor couldn't. Rations, salaries, ammunition. Once again, he was betting on one man's rise. And once again, it paid. Zhou won the war. He rose to the top of the imperial court, and he brought his banker with him. So when the empire needed money, and after years of war, it always needed money, Hu was the man who raised it. He raised it abroad. He arranged loans from foreign banks, chiefly from the Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, HSBC. The total, 24 million silver dollars, more than the empire collected in a year. Every dollar of it flowed through Hu's own banks. The loan came in. His network moved it to wherever the government needed it. The Chinese empire had stopped running its own finances. It had outsourced the job to a private banker, on his ledgers, through his vaults, across his network. For years, the imperial treasury was a man named Hu. Wahang had made him a province's banker. Zhou made him the empire's. And being the empire's banker paid. The profit was in the terms. He borrowed from the foreigners at 8%. He lent to the government at 15%. The difference, he pocketed. He was making almost double his money on the government's loans. It made him indispensable. It also made him a target. In the rival camp at court, powerful men watched a merchant skim the empire and grow richer than the empire itself. They wrote the number down. They would wait for their moment. But that moment was years off. For now, Hu had never stood higher. The throne paid its banker in the one currency a merchant could never buy for himself: rank. They made him a minister of the empire. No merchant had ever risen so high. A man born with nothing now outranked men born to everything. This was the machine at full speed. Access funded the business. The business bought more access. Every turn left him richer and harder to touch. But the machine had a flaw, and it was hiding in plain sight. Everything, the banks, the loans, the next great bet to come, sat on top of other people's money. Money that could be pulled any day, all at once. Remember that. At the height of all of it, Hu made the move he is still remembered for. He went after silk. Silk was China's greatest export, and its price was set in Shanghai by the foreign trading houses that bought it. Hu decided to take that power for himself. His agents fanned out across the countryside and bought the silk at the source, bale after bale. 15,000 bales, nearly the whole year's harvest. The plan: corner the global supply and force the foreigners to pay his price. For a while, it worked. A witness at the time recorded the result in a single line. On the open market, the foreigners couldn't buy an ounce. The richest merchant in China had his hand on the throat of a global market. Cornering a market is one of the oldest dreams in finance, and one of the most dangerous. A century later, 3 American brothers named Hunt would chase the same dream with silver, buying up the global supply to bend the price to their will. The market broke them, It was about to break Hu the same way. By 1883, the corner cracked. On two fronts at once. A boycott at home. The foreign trading houses banded together to stop buying and wait him out. And a crash an ocean away. A recession in America froze the global demand for silk overnight. Hu was left holding the entire crop with no one to sell it to. He had cornered the market just as the market disappeared. He was forced to dump it back to the very trading houses he had tried to break, at a loss. And here is the part the story always gets wrong. The silk loss was real, but it was in the millions. His banks moved tens of millions. Losing a few million was a wound, not a death blow. What killed him was where the money had come from. Hu had funded all of it, the silk, the wars, the foreign loans, with other people's money. Money he had promised to return the moment they asked. And he hadn't held back enough to cover a panic. This is the oldest trap in banking. A bank lends out the money it promised to return on demand. It works, right up until everyone asks at once. If that sounds familiar, it should. All the trap needed was a trigger, and his enemies had one. That same year, a foreign loan came due. A government payment to Hu, the money he was counting on to cover the loan, was quietly held back by the rival faction that had been waiting for exactly this. For years, Hu had been sitting on a powder keg, a fortune built on money that could be pulled the moment anyone panicked. It was missing a match. Then his enemies struck it. Word got out that the richest banker in China was short of cash. That is the one word a bank cannot survive. His customers came for their money, all of them, at once. There was not enough to pay them. There never was. Late in 1883, Hu's banks began to fall. Hangzhou branch first, then Shanghai, then the rest of the network, one city after another, until the largest private bank in the country was gone. The throne that had showered him with honors turned on him. The emperor ordered his rank stripped and his property seized. Hu died 2 years later, broke, disgraced, alone. The same court that had made him a minister wrote his verdict: a profiteer scheming for gain, a plague on the people, and a parasite on the state. The man who had promised never to deceive was buried as a swindler. And when the seizure party finally came for the fortune, the largest in China, they walked through the door and found what we began with: an empty house, nothing left to take. Hu is remembered as the man who bet a fortune on silk and lost. That is not what happened. The silk bet hurt him. It did not have to ruin him. He was brought down by how he paid for everything, with money that could walk out the door overnight. He built the largest bank in the country on the one thing a bank can never afford to lose: the trust of the people who handed him their money. Hu was not even the only banker to fall in 1883. The same panic swept through Shanghai and pulled down dozens of banks alongside him. And the trap didn't die with them. It came back in the Great Depression, when thousands of American banks collapsed. It came back in 2007 outside a British bank called Northern Rock, where customers queued around the block to pull their savings. It came back in 2008, Washington Mutual, the largest bank failure in American history, and Wachovia days later. And in 2023, It moved faster than anyone thought possible. Customers pulled $42 billion out of Silicon Valley Bank in a single day. They didn't line up in the street. They did it from their phones in an afternoon. Different country, different century, the same trap: borrow short, lend long, and pray no one panics. In 1883, his customers panicked, and the panic ruined Hu, not the silk. Was Hu a crook who got what he deserved, or a banker who did what every bank does and got unlucky? Let us know in comments. Subscribe to The Silk Ledger. We're auditing history, one chapter at a time.